Hello and welcome to the Hybrid Trader channel. I've been trading Forex for about 5 to 6 years, but a lot of that time was not trading, where you start, maybe trade for 6 months, stop for a year. So really maybe 2 years of trading. So I wouldn't call myself an expert trader, and this channel is not about teaching anybody anything. It is really just about describing or displaying my journey here. My focus is automation. I really like to trade with automation. Not particularly interested in standard trading from a time point of view, and I just find the challenge of creating a robot or a EA that can actually make money on its own very challenging, a lot of fun, very interesting. I trade pretty well entirely Forex. Well, I do trade only Forex at this point. I am maybe going to add some indices, but in general, it's Forex for sure. The tool or the software and website I like to use to do all my coding is FXtrema. This is the website. Basically, it's a tag-based system. So instead of having a straightforward text editor to write all your code, this creates a series of tags, or provides a series of tags like is shown below here. Right here. So to give you an idea, the EA we're looking at today, this is the code, or the view of the code that I see. It's a visual representation. The code is all behind the scenes, and if you want to add, a particular function like buy now, really you're just filling in how much, whether you want a stop loss or take profit, if you're going to use a group, a specific symbol, whatever. But the actual code is invisible to you. And why I like this is not only speed and just moving things around, it's extremely fast, is that it gives me a nice visual representation of what's going on. If you decide to try FXtrema, then a channel on YouTube I highly recommend is Voxel Code. Now, when I started out, and in fact until fairly recently, this channel didn't exist, and it's an amazing site that all of these videos are examples of code. So you can learn so much from just following along with one of these videos. And in many of the cases, some of them will allow you to download the file and import it into your FXtrema account and then just work on it from there. This is perhaps the best value YouTube channel, I think, from a coding perspective that's out there. Nothing beats this. Now, his later EAs, or samples I should say, because he makes a big point that these are not EAs to trade. They're not for that purpose. They're examples of showing you, sure, there's many different strategies he's included, which really helps, but it's really an example of how to write the code, and very educational. So these are not meant as final EAs that you're gonna, just have this huge massive free EAs to use, and he's somehow saying you're going to make money with them. Not necessarily, and you're probably not. They're going to need some work, but still, this is if you're using FXtrema, especially if you're new, I think you pretty well should have to subscribe to this channel. Now, the EA we're working on today, called Blue Skye, is actually based on one of these very early simple samples, examples of code. It is this one here, which is grid strategy, It's a scalping. But you can see the actual code involved that he's showing as an example. It's very basic, very simple, and probably on its own, it's not going to make you money. It's going to probably blow up at times, or make money for a while, then lose money or whatever. So you still need, this is just your starting point. But highly recommended that you, play around with this channel. This is a great way to learn. If you would prefer not to have to pay for FX Streamer or go this route, and you just want to use a traditional coding style of using a text editor and writing your code, there's two really good channels I'd recommend. First is Rene Balkes. It's a great channel. He's a very good trader, I think, very honest, and not always trying to sell you something. And all of his coding, as you can sort of see up here, it's just standard everyday code. And another one which is fairly new to me that I've just been watching, because even though I don't use the same type of program, I'm not writing code the way they are, still they have an awful lot to say that is useful. Trustful Trading, another interesting channel I recommend for people who are interested in automating Forex trading. And finally, another great channel which I really enjoy is Inman Trading. This is not, in fact, I don't think he trades Forex, I think he trades futures, but he's really got the same attitude as I do about the whole market, and how I want to try a lot of different things and just not listen to sort of the standard trading practice regarding stop losses, regarding hedging, or regarding risk reward, sort of the standard thing you hear for everybody out there. Now, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't work. It's just that I would prefer to test things for myself and think outside the box, and I think Inman Trading is very much the same, except he expresses it much better than I would. This is a good video to watch, for example, to get an idea of what I mean. Highly recommended you take a look at this channel. Okay, so let's get into it. Open up Strategy Tester. Now I've run a bunch of tests previously on this and came to the conclusion that the 4-hour time frame is the best for this. Now, the one pair that I think had probably one of the most problems that I tested was pound CAD. So the idea now is I want to work on pound CAD and try to improve it as much as I can. Now, every time you add code to reduce your risk or reduce your losses, you're almost always going to also reduce your profit. So it's always going to be a balance. The less risk, the less profit. But if we're going to, and I do have a goal of trying to qualify with a prop firm, pass a challenge, and there's no way you're going to get through that if you have an EA that's generating 10-15% drawdown all the time. It's just not going to work. Even if you make money in the long run, you could do that with your personal account. It's just not going to work with a prop firm. So the first test I'm going to run quickly on here so we can see where the problem areas may be is I'm just going to run it for a 3-month. Actually, let's make it a little shorter so it's not take so long. Let's go just to the end of February here. I'll just go right there. No visual mode, and let's just put the graph on. Okay. I'm not going to wait for the whole thing, but because we can see a problem right early on January 10th. Now, according to this, the deposit load is 8%. To be honest, I don't quite understand this. I'm going to have to look into exactly what that means, but we can see from the green lines here that, and obvious in the chart too, that this was probably your biggest loss. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go to the visual, and we're going to start just before January 10th, and we're going to see what exactly happened. So let's go here. Let's go 10th. Let's go visual mode. And let's see how this works out. I'll explain somewhat these things mean as we go along. Now, the way this EA works, as you can see, it's a counter trend system. So even though you can see the current trend there is a downward trend, you can see all of the trades it placed were buy trades, and you can see up here that it made 33.89 in buys, and there were no sell trades at all. So that is going to be the fundamental weakness, if you can call it a weakness if it's making money. But the fundamental weakness is that it's always going to be trying to buy counter trend here. So now another thing, in fact, I think the worst is already over of what we saw, but let's just have a quick look at a few things. I've written some code here that through this, it tells me what the lowest we got to at any point. So at some point in this trading session, we were down $129, which based on the balance, I believe was 1.3%. So that is within tolerance, actually. But the quickest way to minimize that, so you're not at 1%, 1.3% per pair, basically, it'd be the worst scenario, is you could just reduce your lot size. So if you reduce the lot size here from $1 a pip to 50 cents per pip, this would all come through here, but you'd have half that percent as your drawdown. So that's just the quickest way to do it. The way I'm going to try to do it is I'm going to use some hedge. I'm going to modify the code to add some hedge trades. So in other words, every time this is buying, I'm going to also put a sell trade in below. And that should, I believe that will help. And that's sort of what we'll be doing over the next, I'll be doing over the next few days. But let's take a quick look at anything up here that might be interesting. You can see that this is just a status of the week. You know, in a demo mode, everything starts at $10,000 balance for the week. So we're up $37 on this pair. Average to range is a big deal to me. So I'm tracking on this pair what the true range is for in over a 14 period area. For the daily, the H4, the H1, 15 minutes and 5 minutes. And this particular version of Blue Sky is trading with settings that I put in here. So in other words, the trade nearby setting, which basically what that means is if all of things are working as they should, and if all of your indicators are telling you it's a buy or a sell, whatever it is, don't make a trade unless it's at least 20 pips away from the other one. So that's where the grid part comes in. It's really creating a grid of trades that are 20 pips apart. And of course, that's adjustable. I could turn that to 40, whatever. The hedge offset is not being used in this version. I'm going to be modifying it to include that. And all that is basically is every time that first trade is set, in this case, it's always setting buys, it's going to set a sell trade too, usually down a little bit further. In case as it keeps coming down, then that's going to be profitable as well. The spread limit is, here's your spread indicator. I don't place any trades if the spread is over 3. The reason it's in here as a input that I can change is if I'm going to trade an indices, for example, you're not going to get those tight of spreads. You're going to need to be able to use a much wider spread. I think fact, I think the one I was looking at the other day, I need at least a 15, 16 pip spread. So that's why I've got that as an adjustable mount. ATR period, as I mentioned, that's set. So if I wanted to change these to be, say, every 7 periods for each of these, I just changed this. Now, this is interesting. Even though I'm not quite using it in this EA, that's these 2 brownish lines. And what that's doing is it's creating a trading range over the last, I think, 12 candles. So that 12 candles of 4 hours, that's a few days. It's basically by watching this during trading, which we'll start in a minute just so we can look at this again, you'll see it tightens and it goes further and further apart, and you get an idea of really the the volatility, if you will, the amount of action that's going on. Is it just trading in a very tight range, or is it beginning to break out? These are all obvious, and I keep track of buys, open, closed, these 2 together, the current trade size, because the reason the trade size is shown over here under buy or sell separately too is because sometimes I'm going to be using a bit of a modification. I might say, I don't usually use the typical martingale approach where you double your trade size. I might just add to it. So in other words, maybe when the trades get down a little further, instead of 0.1s, they might be 0.2s, or they might be 0.15s, or whatever variable I want. But I'm almost never use, in fact, I don't use doubling. It's a bit too dramatic. Sell trades is obviously the same idea, and I mentioned what this is. This is really tracking my drawdown. And now this number here, 9, this is the distance between these 2 brown lines. So really that's kind of giving me an indication that that's actually a pretty tight range right here in the last couple of days. It has not been huge. Now, let's keep running here and see what happens. You can see 10, it's getting a little wider, 11. So it's telling you something's happening with the actual range on about a 2-day, let's see, there's six bars in a day, so 12 would be roughly 2 days worth of data we're looking here. Now, of course, I can change all of that. I could change these numbers. These are all variables too, so instead of starting to count at the 2nd candle and ending my count at the 12th candle, I could make that just ending my count at the 6th candle, which is basically just looking at the range for a day instead of 2 days. But this is, at this point, none of this is being used in the EA. It is just, in this case right now, it's just a visual. Keep an idea of what's going on. But when I was testing it before, from what I can tell, there's no other real trouble points for this EA until February. It just keeps making money, basically. But as you can see, it doesn't trade a whole lot. Remember, these are 4-hour candles. So you're actually going here days. That's a day and a half or so since the last trade, which is not always ideal. I'm not a big fan of having to wait days. But then I usually trade 10 to 15 pairs at one time. So and of course with automation you can do that pretty easily. It's no big deal. Although it's always simpler if you've got less pairs. But here you can see it's working again, and you can see it's buying all the time. Even though we're definitely in a downward sell trend, and it's making money. And as you can see, here's your numbers up here. It just keeps making money. Anyway, that'll give you an idea of where we're at so far.